Prime Minister Peter O'Neill refuses PACER Plus deal. Report reveals high rate of violence against children in PNG. 2016 ICT Expo staged in Port Moresby.
This is NBC Papua New Guinea National News.
Good evening, I'm Antonia Singut. Papua New Guinea will not be part of the PACER Plus trade deal between Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific Island countries. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill announced this in his speech at the 47th Pacific Islands Forum in the Federated States of Micronesia. He told Pacific Island leaders that after careful deliberations into the matter, the size and structure of PNG's economy would see a net loss through PACER Plus. Despite this, Mr O'Neill said this deal will be beneficial for smaller economies like the Pacific Island nations, and it would benefit the lives of many island communities. The Prime Minister pointed out that despite the global challenges such as low commodity prices, Pacific Island nations must continue to work together through smart economic decisions through continuous growth of the region.
Some of the trade deals that we have embarked on, including the PACER Plus. This will be finalized shortly, but as you are aware, Papua New Guinea will not be part of that arrangement. This is because after careful analysis and consideration and the size and structure of our economy, we see a net loss to our Papua New Guinean economy. But I know very well that PACER Plus will be a strong bonus to many of the economies in the region, and it will certainly improve the lives of many Pacific Island communities. That is why it is important that we should be able to conclude this as soon as possible. Global economy is slowing down. Global commodity prices are low. There is a slower growth in the larger Asian trading partners, meaning that it will put pressure on our island economies. It will affect tourism. It will mean that it will be lower demands for our resources and of course our commodities. But we must continue to work together, think smarter, so that we can make sensible decisions so that our economic growth continues in the region.
Meanwhile, Mr O'Neill said he expects returns from the fisheries sector to improve through the work of the Pacific Islands Forum. He said fisheries is a significant sector for all Forum countries and will have positive outcomes for multiple stakeholders. Mr O'Neill said this is an area of priority and PIF countries must not lose sight of the commitment and continue to monitor the implementation of current fisheries programs in the region. Jaya Bakia reports.
Mr O'Neill stressed that as island states, it is important to focus on the safeguarding of our marine environment, especially the fisheries sector. The Prime Minister highlighted the work of the Fisheries Task Force that is undertaking to create an environment between stakeholders at the regional level. He said the prioritized actions agreed upon by Member States must be pushed to ensure a sustainable increase in the benefits of this important resource.
As a group of island nations, the status of our marine environment remains our #1 priority. The ocean must be an important part of our strategic political discussions. Last year, we prioritized that this action be taken to ensure that we, of course, increase and, of course, receive sustainable returns for our marine resources. We must not lose sight of this commitment. We must continue to, of course, monitor the implementation of this commitment.
Climate change is also another factor that is becoming a big threat to the fishing industry, and it will be one of the main issues of concern and discussions in such regional meetings. Mr O'Neill said climate change affects not only the environment but the economy and politics as well. He urged Pacific Island leaders to push larger nations to honor the Paris agreements and the targets for the benefit of the region.
It is no longer an environmental issue. It is also an economic and a political one as well. As we know, climate change is destroying many of our communities, costing us jobs in our economies, and of course displacing many of our people. Recent commitments by the United States and China to ratify the agreement is most welcome. We must continue to show leadership and encourage all other countries that have not ratified the agreement to do so.
Papua New Guinea was the first country to submit the post-COP21 Climate Action Plan. Jay Hebakia, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
The fourth departmental heads meeting was held at the Igam Army Barracks in Lae today. It was conducted by Government Chief Secretary Ambassador Isaac Lupari. The meeting was to get updates and ensure that key policies and programs of the government are accountable to the people of Papua New Guinea. These updates culminate into the annual Leaders Summit as the ultimate accountability forum for implementation of policies and projects to the political leaders and to the people. At the meeting, Departments of Transport, Works, Personal Management and the National Housing Corporation provided updates on their respective policies and projects. Ambassador Lupari said it is important to have these quarterly meetings to ensure implementers do not lose track in their roles to implement government's key policies and programs. He said the NEC has approved a Project Management Oversight Committee in 2013 to provide strategic oversight on implementation, and so far the achievements have been good. The meeting was also attended by Chief Executive Officers, Managing Directors of state-owned entities and commodity boards for implementation updates by selected agency heads. A non-government organisation, Save the Children PNG, is calling for cooperative approaches from all stakeholders to protect children from all forms of violence in the country. The call follows the launch of a report which revealed extensive violence against children in the country. The report, titled "The Child Protection System in Papua New Guinea," was launched on Wednesday night in Port Moresby. Gabriel Bego with the details.
This is the latest report released by Save the Children following their research and assessment of prevention and response services for children and families in Papua New Guinea in 5 selected provinces: Morobe Central and Sidi, East Sepik and the autonomous region of Bougainville. The report reveals, among others, the high rates of violence against children in PNG, lack of understanding about violence against children, which results in little priority given to child protection and prevention of violence. Despite new laws in place to deal with child protection, practical implementation is lacking. Children's needs are not being attended to due to lack of knowledge and skills by those designated to support children and lack of available services.
The impact on children isn't just one of the impact to their immediate physical or emotional well-being, even though so often that's what we think of and that's where the resources are allocated to. We also need to be talking about understanding and doing something about the long-term impact to their educational, physical and emotional development.
The Australian government through AUSAID has supported the study and with its experience working with partners in PNG.
Child protection is everybody's business. I think we all come from families that have been touched with child protection issues probably, and we really agree that the best interests of children, we need to take that on board and we need to think about that more in what we're doing.
Save the Children's Country Director Jennifer L.C. Bai says the report can be improved if all stakeholders, including government, have one focus.
It will only be through the collective contribution of each of us that we'll begin to see real change for children. It will only be through more coordination and collaboration and understanding what we each bring to the complex puzzle that is supporting child protection that we can hope to achieve an ideal of a future generation who will no longer tolerate violence against children as the norm.
With the call for cooperation, The government, through the Department of Community, Youth and Religion, is doing its bit to protect children. Gabriel Bego, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
All schools under the tuition fee-free policy are yet to receive their term-free funds. According to some school principals, most schools are operating on a low budget, but are hoping the funds will be released soon before Term 3 winds down on the 23rd of this month. Sheila Malkin reports.
The government allocated 602 million for this year's TFF, and 301 million kina has already been released for the last 2 terms. However, most schools are yet to receive their funds allocation for this term. Gereu Secondary School Principal Martin Kenehe told NBC National News today that the school is functioning on an empty budget. Another school principal in Kiunga also confirmed this, adding that parents of boarding students are now paying project fees to sustain the term because the schools have only 2 weeks left before the term finishes. 10 ancillary school staff have been laid off from work but will resume duty if funds are made available. Meanwhile, it is understood that a meeting was held on Wednesday by the Association of Parents and Guardians in the National Capital District to negotiate and lobby the National Education Department regarding the issue, so that all public schools can be allowed to collect fees to keep the schools afloat, given the current financial situation of the country. Sheila Malkin, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
Meanwhile, Acting Education Secretary Dr. Uke Kombra says the third quarter of the tuition fee-free funds have been approved and will be remitted to schools' accounts soon. Speaking to NBC National News from Leh, Dr. Kombra said by next week, schools are expected to receive their funds. The Secretary, however, could not confirm the exact amount of what has been released. He is currently in Leh attending the 4th Departmental Heads meeting at the Igam Army Barracks. Limiting illegal trade in threatened species, promoting nature-based solutions to climate change, and accounting for biodiversity conservation in the development of renewable resources are among the first global conservation priorities set at the IUCN Congress. The 85 motions were adopted by IUCN's 1,300 government and civil society members. Following the first ever electronic vote cast during the Congress, a ban on gillnet fishing, among other unsustainable issues, were highlighted. Another 14 global conservation issues have been debated and voted on during the Congress. Kevin Dayonga reports.
It included advancing the conservation of the high seas, mitigating the impacts of oil palm expansion on biodiversity, protecting primary forests and closure of domestic markets to all ivory sales. Members have urged for restrictions on trade in threatened species to exceptional cases only, as defined by the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Despite current protection measures at the global and local levels, the species' survival is at risk due to overexploitation, illegal trade and degradation of its habitat. Unsustainable fisheries were the focus of another decision. Government and NGO members have been urged for a permanent ban to gillnet fishing throughout the entire Pacific Ocean. IUCN's Director General Inga Anderson says these critical issues such as illegal wildlife trade will be addressed as each countries and state adhere to the laws put in place.
Atoll countries, some of which are 1 meter, 2 meters above sea level. And so it's important, and that's part of what IUCN's broader mission and statement is, that we come with the science, such as what is compiled here, but we also bring the very human experience to the fore. And combining these, we see an undeniable shift on the impact of oceans and how that impacts people, and those people who are particularly vulnerable, of course those who depend on the ocean for their sustenance and for their livelihood.
Members of the IUCN have also defined nature-based solutions as actions that protect and manage ecosystems while addressing societal challenges such as food and water security, climate change, disaster risk reduction, human health and economic well-being. Renewable energy has been the focus of 2 decisions adopted by IUCN members, who have encouraged governments to implement energy efficiency and renewable energy plans. According to the decisions, the international conservation community needs to assess these emerging fields and its impacts. These motions are proposed by IUCN members every 4 years to set priorities for the work of IUCN. Kevin Dayonga, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
We now look at the weather preview with Douglas.
Thanks again, Antonia. The weather in brief: wet weather conditions expected around the country this time, with showers and rain associated with thunderstorms. Join me a little later in the bulletin for the details. Antonia, it's back to you.
Thank you, Douglas. Coming up after the break, 2016 ICT Expo staged in Port Moresby and Mulbaya District Administration submits acquittals. Stay with us on NBC National News.